I decided to make my first D26 using this new template that I created, hoping it's close to the original. Now, I decided to hot cut it. I used a polyfilm plastic gift wrap. I sprayed water on the glass, spread it out, drew my template around, I installed my reinforcing for the leading edge, which I put from the nose all the way to the tip of the wingtip. I have never done that before, but thought, well, let's see what happens. So that's what I did. And when I installed the bow, I used my bow setter, which I almost always do when I'm making a kite. And but when I installed the bow, which I did before I installed the spine, I glued this portion of each wingtip bow on each wingtip here and here. And while it was wet, I put it in the bow setter and allowed it to just drop down onto the sail, pressed it down so it'd make good contact, and let it dry. Then what I did was install the spine. I did that by putting a piece of wax paper underneath the bow to the nose and put contact cement on the back side of the spine. And then I lifted up the bow, slid the spine under the bow while the glue was wet, put the nose of the spine on the waxed paper, kept the spine above the sail until I had it aligned with the spine line that I drew. Then I lowered it, pressed it down, and removed the wax paper up here, pressed it down, and let it dry. Now, contact cement is supposed to be used on both surfaces that are bonded. Allow it to dry until it's tacky, and then stick the two parts together. But I've noticed that with kites, I can apply it wet, and as long as I let it dry completely, while it's in the bow setter, I can get just as good a bond with it, at least so far. I've made a few kites this way, and they've all turned out fine, never had a problem with them. When I cut the sail out, I made a template that is simply the shape of my kite template. And when I cut it out, I just laid this here and cut using the hot knife, and I used the cardboard as a guide until I got to the straight part, and then I used my ruler as a guide. When I cut the leading edge, I used a ruler to guide it right along here until right about here where the tape is. When I got there, what I did was I used a piece of, well, it's like a popsicle stick, a big popsicle stick that I just split. And I decided that just in case the glue being wet didn't bond well enough, I would make a very tiny hem. And that hem I created by putting this piece of wood against the bow. And then I used that as a guide in hot cut right along that, so that my hot cutter did not touch the bow and damage the carbon fiber. That left a very, very tiny, well, it's the width of this stick here, very tiny hem for that part of the bow. After I completed the kite, that hem I left, I put reinforcing tape here and here, and then I used my very skinny syringe tip and put a very small bead of glue right along that edge of that hem that was remaining on both sides. And then I used a piece of wax paper under it and just lifted that wax paper up and rolled that hem onto the bow and let it dry. Now I cut the sail out last. I installed the bow on the sail material as it was flat and smoothed out on the glass. Same with the spine. I got those two components in and the leading edge reinforcement. That's when I cut it out. And when I cut it out, of course, it was wet, let it dry, and began the rest of the process of putting the bridle on, reinforcing tape, and I decided to put two battens here. I'm not sure those are going to be the right solution, but we'll find out. And then I put my tension line on for the 1x4 millimeter spine that I used. The bow I used is 1.3 millimeter diameter, just slightly bigger in diameter than a 0.05 inch diameter. But I think it'll be fine. I'm eager to fly it and see how it goes. And if you make one, please let me know what changes you made, what modifications, if any, and how the kite flew.